Hello guys, in today's video we're going to be going over the circular flow of income, which is a basic macroeconomic model that can be used to look at overall economic activity. So there are two types of circular flow of income models. There's the closed economy model, which is just everything other than the overseas sector. And there's the open economy model, which is everything including the overseas sector, right? So think of the economy as being in a box, and when the box is closed, you have no access to foreign countries that are outside the box. But when the box is open, you do. So that's when you have imports and exports. More on that later. Anyways, so you may recall that households, right, are the owners of factors of production. So that's land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Whereas firms, right, are the people who produce, or the agencies or the businesses that produce goods and services. They produce goods and services, right? So what I'm looking at right now is something called the two sector model, where you only look at households and firms. So two sectors, right? This is where all the circular flow of income starts, so I'll start here. So households, when they own the factors of production, they provide them to firms in exchange for income, right? Income, most people assume or think about as wages, but wages are just one component of income. Right, income are the returns to households for the provision of factors of production. So what that means is when households give firms factors of production such as land, labor, capital, and enterprise, they get given a corresponding factor income based on what they provide. So if they provide land, they get something known as rent, right? This is, think about maybe providing like renting a house, right? When a landowner rents a house, they get rent payments. There's labor. Now with labor, that's the common form of income. What we think is income, wages. Those are the returns. And there's capital. The returns for capital are interests, right? Interest payments. And there's enterprise. I'm just going to write ENT because I'm lazy. And the return for that is profit. Alright, so if you start off a new business, you're going to earn profit. That's the return you get for providing your enterprise. Right, taking that risk, that's what you get as the reward. Now, so these resources or the factors of production that the households provide for the firms, they then convert that to goods and services as output, right? And when output is bought by households, what the firms get in exchange are the payments that they make, or the spending that the households make on goods and services. And one thing about this diagram I would change this E to a C. It's definitely not an E. And that's because it is consumption expenditure, which is the spending by households on all goods and services, which is the return for households getting goods and services from firms, right? That's the two sector model. Now we got to look at the financial sector, the government sector, and the overseas sector. Let's start with the financial sector. Financial sector you can think of as just banks, right? So we have two things that lead on to these separate three sectors. We have the leakages and the injections. So the leakages are outflows from the circular flow of income. So I forgot to mention previously that what you can see here, you can see the resources and output, right? Goods and services and factors of production. They're both physical things, right? So this is called the real flow. And you can see income, right? And expenditure, which are sort of money related things. So those are called money flow. So you have the real flow and the money flow. So the real flow is usually drawn clockwise, and the money flow is drawn anti-clockwise, but I'm not sure if that really matters too much. But anyways, so for households, instead of spending, right, they could save their money. Saving is the act of putting away money in order to use it in the future, right? So you can think of just a worker saving money in case something bad happens to them in the future, right? For money you save, the opportunity cost is that you spend less, right? So it deters you or decreases the value of your spending or consumer expenditure, right? So this counts as a leakage because it's moving out of the circular flow of income. Now, the financial sector and be banks, right? So what they can also put that money back in to the circular flow of income, right? In the form of injections. Now, injections are inflows to the circular flow of income. That means that from these three sectors on the outside, it's actually coming in, back into the circular flow of income up here. So investment is the spending by firms or government on capital goods, usually physical capital, right? So you can think of them buying a building and they borrow money to buy that building. Well, that borrowed money is coming from the financial sector and going into expenditure. So it's going back in to the circular flow of income, the two-sector model. So it's considered an injection as it's flowing in to the circular flow of income. Up next, we have the government sector, and the leakage here is taxation. So taxation or taxes is a compulsory levy on individuals that must be paid, right? So you can think of income taxes. So when a household person is earning income, let's say you're working at a job, you're as a doctor, and then you're earning income, much of that is going to go to taxes, right? So maybe that money you were going to spend earlier, like you will be saving some of that money if you're responsible and spending it, like saving it, yeah, doing some other stuff with it. But some of that money you could have potentially spent is being taxed by the government. So it's entering the government sector and it's leaving the circular flow of income. So it's a leakage, it's an outflow from the circular flow of income. But there's also the government sector. You got to consider government spending, which is spending by governments on goods and services. So think of governments building public parks, how they spend money, right? So they are spending by them on goods and services, which in this case could be a public park. So this is money going back into the circular flow of income. So that's an injection. Next, we have the open economy part, which is the overseas sector. So you can think of this as foreign countries, right? So households, if they import something, import is the domestic purchase of a foreign produced good or service, right? So when you buy something that's been produced in a country elsewhere, money is actually leaving to that country from this country's circular flow of income. So it's considered leakage as it's an outflow of from the circular flow of income. The opposite applies for exports, right? Exports are domestically produced goods and services which are bought by foreign consumers, right? So think of maybe you're exporting computers, right? When someone else in another country, say China, buys your computers, then they in fact they pay they pay money from their country to your country, so it's entering your country. So that's entering your circular flow of income, which means that it is an injection. So to sum it all up, we have the real flow, which is when households provide firms with goods and factors of production, which the firms then provide as goods and services. And for the provision of factors of production, firms provide income or factor rewards for the households in the form of rent, wages, interest, and profit, depending on what factor of production is given. And in return for the purchase of output or goods and services, households provide consumption expenditure to firms. There are leakages, which are outflows from the circular flow of income, and these include savings, taxation, and imports to the financial, government, and overseas sector, respectively. And also the injections, the inflows into the circular flow of income model, which include investment, government spending, and exports, respectively, right, from the financial, government, and overseas sector. Now, why this is important is because you can look at an overall economy by comparing the level of injections and leakages, right? So we can check whether the circular flow of income grows bigger or smaller. Now let's think of bigger, right? If the value of injections, right, is greater than the value of leakages, then the circular flow of income will become bigger. Now think about this logically. If you have more money entering, which is injections, then less money leaving, Well, obviously you're going to be getting a net increase, right? So the circular flow of income grows when the injections are greater than leakages. This is why economies usually compare all these levels of savings, taxation, imports, and exports. It's a huge deal for them to measure economic activity. Next, let's consider the obtuse. So smaller would be when leakages are greater than injections. When you think about it, leakages, money leaving the circular flow of income, is greater than money entering the circular flow of income or injections. That means more money is leaving than entering. So, of course, there'll be less money in the circular flow of income and it'll contract, right? So, remember, when you have these questions, you should probably draw a diagram. That'll probably help you out. And also in a diagram question, make sure use a ruler, I reckon, instead of drawing just lines, because you can make it very organized. This diagram is quite organized. I found it on the internet. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and that'll be circular flow of income, all done by me. On to you. Have a good one.